Thank you guys so much for coming out. What a great way to end our presentation and time here at GamerX and a candid discussion on romance in video games. If you are not here for romance in video games, I'm sorry. You're stuck here. My name's Jessica Mears, and I'm the lead community manager for BioWare Edmonton. I work on Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and other future things. And I'm so excited to be here, joined by the David Gator, lead writer.
The David Gator.
The David Gator, lead writer of the Dragon Age franchise, and he's been with BioWare since Baldur's Gate 2, so he's got a lot of lore in his head.
Not all of us are, unfortunately.
No, and David is also the guy who loves to break our hearts. David,
Yeah.
why?
There's got to be some good part of this job.
What happened to you? Where did it? Where?
I was deprived as a child. What can I say? All right, let's talk a little bit about romances. I will probably leave some time for questions later because I know maybe you guys have some more specific questions, and maybe on particular characters or whatnot.
But we unfortunately can't do the, will I get to see blank in blank? Will I get to finally do blank in blank?
Yeah. The questions about Inquisition, I mean, I'd love to talk about what we're doing specifically with romances and Inquisition. Can't do that yet. So, we can talk about the past. All right, so, romances are pretty popular. It's actually one of the more enjoyable parts of my job is to consider, well, I would say normally, fans can get kind of crazy about romances sometime, but I think that's because they enjoy them so much and they get very passionate about these characters.
You make us crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why more companies don't take that into account. I mean, it's one thing to have a piece of entertainment that has a romantic arc in it. I mean, almost every movie seems like it does it, but video games shy away from it more often than not. It's another thing, I think, completely to have a romantic arc that you are invested in personally and that you make choices about. And I think when we first started off doing the romances back in the days of BG2, I think we kind of underestimated exactly what this was going to mean to a lot of people. We made some decisions over, well, who the characters, we were going to have romances, and it took place afterwards. We made the characters first, and we were starting to write them, and then it was like, well, maybe we'll have sort of a series of romantic plots, and you can have a romance of various characters, and we sort of had, this one, and I got Animan, and that was after I'd started writing him, and I'd written him kind of as a jerk, and I was like, oh, really? Animan? God. Anyway, and it kind of blew up from there, and it was interesting later. I mean, if you saw my talk at GDC I did in March, it was interesting to note the sorts of somewhat uncomfortable implications that came along with addressing romance in games. The sorts of things we were unintentionally saying, even if we felt we didn't want to, even if we wanted to pull out the excuse, this is just a game. It's not just a game to the people playing it. I think that there's a lot of things that get brought up about what kind of people we believe should be playing our game. Whether it's a way that the writer can sort of talk directly to the fan. So it has a lot of things that go along with that. So as time went on, we sort of changing a little bit about the way we went about. What kinds of romances we would have in the game period. I don't know. We're talking about what to talk about on this panel. I'm trying to think of what kind of questions people would have.
I actually have a question that I think I'm allowed to ask questions. It's my panel too. Well, I think this is something that probably a lot of people think in their head, and they just don't want to say it. And I will tell you that anyone who is thinking this, you're not alone, and you're not weird. I have heard people who literally are movie stars say this thing, that the relationship they had in the game is just as important, just as valid as a relationship they've had with a spouse IRL or something. And I think that brings up this idea of, and it's kind of, it feels weird. It's like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel that way. But a lot of people feel that way, that there's this idea of reality versus authenticity and creating a romance that feels authentic. And I wonder if you could speak a bit about that.
About how we do that?
About, I guess, because it feels like these characters are your friends, are your lovers, are your companions, and that is not something that is a simple feat to achieve. And if I didn't hear it from so many people who are like, I think I'm the only one who feels this way, but...
Yeah, I guess part of it is the agency you have. You're not going to get that in a piece of entertainment where you're just watching it happening. You don't necessarily identify with the main character, right? You might identify on some level, but you don't identify in the way that this is me. This is me making choices through this avatar. So the relationship the character has with my avatar is, in effect, with me. I think that in a lot of ways the feelings that engenders get so much more personal. But some people feel very intensely about it. I mean, I can choose not to romance this person, but I feel like when I do that they are speaking to me. In a way, the writer is speaking to you. I mean, I don't know how to describe how that process occurs. We start off at some point identifying which characters are going to have romances. Sometimes we'll identify a character and we say, well, we want this character to be a romance because they'll be like this. And then as we start writing them, they will change. And I think because as we're writing, we're trying to imagine the sorts of person that would romance this person, how that relationship would develop. It can be very, very different. I know when I wrote Fenris recently, trying to imagine, he started off as a character I wanted to write as a survivor. And it wasn't immediately identified that he would be a romance, but when it got brought up and the writers were talking to me about it, and they said, well, Dave, would that be weird that somebody who is a survivor who has survived trauma and is filled with that much hate? Because there was a saying I remember reading, hate is drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And that was sort of my quote that I started off with Fenris. That was the first line I wrote, and I sort of kept it in mind as I was writing. And it was like, what would it be like to romance somebody who had that much hate and was walking wounded? Would that make for an unhealthy relationship? And I sat back and thought about it because I was like, well, no, I think that could be a healing relationship. It could say something positive. It really depended on how I turned it. And we always want to find that with every character, some piece of it that ties to how we want the player to feel, right? I know everyone jokes, the writers want to make you cry. We do. It's not all we want to do, right? The reason you cry is because maybe we've succeeded in making you care. And that's what we want. We want you to care. We want you to care enough to rage. When somebody posts a half-hour rant about how much they hate Alistair, and when he dumped them at the Lands meet.
I can't, it's...
Because he never loved you.
I can't. He loved me. He loved us all. I need to be alone for a while.
I remember I ran into the first thing that Felicia Day said to me when we went to her recording session for Talus. I walk into the room and I said, hi, my name is, and I didn't even finish it. She said, why wouldn't Fenris sleep with me? And I said, did you try? She said, yes. I said, he'll do it eventually. So yeah, like the thing I mentioned about Fenris that he wasn't immediately identified as a romance is a lot of people have asked, at what point do you decide? Like, I mean, do you say we need a a character who is romanceable by both genders, and that's where it starts. And I mean, it can. And the answer to that is it actually can kind of vary. We try to start with just the sort of character we want. We can reach a point where, okay, we've got an assortment of characters. Probably at that point, they're still very broad strokes. They might be something like Fenris, that the walking wounded survivor. May not know much more about him than that. Maybe I know that he's a warrior. Once we've got that list, we will start looking at, okay, what sorts of romantic stories could we tell? We want them to be different. There are all kinds of romantic story arcs that you can tell with characters, whether it is the dashing prince, whether it is the Morgan, I remember, was the ice princess, but a little bit different. That the thing that was fascinating about her was that you could get through her armor, that the barriers she put up to keep people away, and once you did, whether it was through friendship or through romance, that would be very, very rewarding, because she was a person who didn't know what true friendship was about. As a matter of fact, I personally, I always thought that the friendship of a female character with romance
God, when
was...
she said she's like your sister.
Yeah.
I was like, I want you to be my sister, Claudia Black.
Oh, I should tell that story.
Oh, please do. just tell it. It's a funny non sequitur.
Non sequitur. First time in Origins, we were starting the recording of all the major characters. They flew me down to LA just to meet with the major actors, just to at least have one session with them, so I could sit down, talk to them about their character, go through at least one session to find their voice and stuff. And Claudia was actually the first actress I sat down with. I've never met with like a star of any caliber, especially one that I loved so much. I watched Farscape. So I sat down with her, and I was so nervous, and I forgot everything that Caroline Livingston told me about how you should talk to actors. And because I was telling her about her character, and when we first started doing the characters, we would assign that sort of an actor that was their voice, at least initially in our head, who could play this character as we were writing them. And Caroline had said, "Don't tell them that." But of course I forgot. So I was talking, and I was saying, "Oh, when we first started, I started writing Morgan. I sort of had." I forgot the name now. Helena Bonham Carter was sort of the actress I had in mind. And she looks at me and says, "So what you're saying is I'm a very cheap version of Helena Bonham Carter." And she said it so seriously, and I was mortified. And she let me sit there for like a full 10 seconds. I was like, and then she laughed. She thought that was funny, and then during the session, every time I'd lean over to the director and I'd give him a note on something she said, and he would buzz in and she'd say, "Does he want me to do it more like Helena?" Total segue, sorry about that.
She's a spitfire.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's my queen as well, so.
I had her first.
But now... Well, now you know how it feels to get hit right in the feels.
Yeah.
Sorry, now I forgot what this panel was about.
But talking about you have a list of followers, the broad strokes, and we would decide, okay, now who's going to be romanced? And not only are we looking for different stories, romances, we're looking for like what options, right? Origins, Morgan was a good romantic contrast to Liliana, for instance. Alistair was a good contrast to Zevran. And that's sort of what we're aiming for. Although it wasn't until Dragon Age 2 where we thought we started addressing the bisexual issue, where we talked about it because when we moved them to you can call them bisexual, you can call them player sexual. There's various terms you can use, but basically they could romance a player of any gender. And there were certain things that prevented us from doing. It prevented us from talking specifically about their sexuality, unless you had something like Isabella is bisexual, right? She talks about romancing people via their gender, but neither Fenris nor Meryl did. And it prevented us from having those characters talk about their sexuality, just so we could leave the illusion open for the player. But we had to weigh that against, well, what this allows us is for a player, no matter what sexuality they are, to have an option. You know, in DAO, they only had one character they could romance, right? But this allows them to have an option, the same as straight players. So, which was more important to us? And you know, it was a pretty quick conversation actually at work, and we decided that, you know, yeah, maybe we do lose something in that, but we gain something more. You know, what we gain is being able to tell this part of our audience that they're just as important to us as everyone else, and I thought that was really important. And thankfully, so did the rest of the team.
Absolutely. I think there actually that brings up an interesting point, and you know, I don't want to get too into the like tech, like a beautiful mind, just lines going into other like crazy connections, but there are a lot of technical, not necessarily limitations, but technical aspects that have to be worked out in romance that are, I guess, less than romantic. That I had no idea that somehow you have a budget, and that like you have a budget for number of words and things like that. That like I don't even think we as fans think about. We don't think, we just think, oh well, you just write and then we play and then you make us feel bad and then we eat chocolate.
Yeah, there's a whole process. I mean, in a game like the ones BioWare makes, every word we have is, if it's recorded, it has a cost associated with it. If it's translated into how many languages, it has a cost associated with it. And in so many of those other languages, I think 4 right now, we also record for them. So it's recorded like 5 times, translated up to 8. So there's a definite cost associated with it. And I mean, there's also cinematics, any kind of implementation, it has to be tested. So it's not just that we keep writing until we stop. I mean, sometimes I know our Loc people say that's clearly what you do. No, it only feels that way just because we write so much. But we have a budget. We call it a word budget, where we have a set number of lines for the entire game that we are allowed. And it's up for the team then to start splitting it up. Because, you know, they would be like, could we do romances better? Well, if by better you mean, could there be more interactions, more conversations, more variances in the conversation? Yes. But then that's got to come from somewhere, right? As long as it's an optional part of the game, there's only so much we can do. But what our goal is as writers is try to eke as much out of the budget that we've allotted to, you know, interactions with characters as we possibly can, to try to give us, you know, as much variance. It's a little bit of a balancing act, to try to you know, make it as cheap as we can, yet you know, enough there that the player feels like they have meaningful interactions. And sometimes we succeed better, you know, and sometimes we don't. I know that there are some people talking about DA2 that we'd cut down the number of interactions enough, or the nature of the interactions. I know actually the total budget for the DA2 followers wasn't that much less than DAO, but we decided to give them plots. Like they had 3 plots throughout the game that were specific to that follower, but that came at the expense maybe of sort of the random Q&A that you would you know, just getting to ask a follower about things, or you know, little random interactions like tell me a story or whatever, right?
That was I was just thinking about how Aveline's quest, even when you're not like trying to go after her, how almost watching her romance someone else was really, I loved that. I loved the idea of,
you know, Luke's favorite part of that is that you could make a pass at Aveline, and he called it a she did a ducky. It's from I think it's from 16 Candles, like a Molly Ringwald movie.
Oh, yeah.
That she had no idea you were coming on to her, just completely oblivious, and here he is at his desk, and he's just cackling away.
Luke's evil.
Yeah, you think I'm evil? It's just mostly me sort of trying to. It's how evil I allow the other writers to be. I'm actually one of the nicer ones. I'll be like, oh, Mary, I don't know.
It's like a mix of very evil and very adorable, all of you. Just like I was like just like kittens that aren't how I love their claws.
Are you calling me a kitten?
A little bit. Well, you could be a cat. What do you want? What do you want to be?
I don't know.
Before we open up to questions, I really want to ask you, why do you think romance in video games is important, specifically the way you approach romance in video games, not necessarily for the whole industry? And where do you think we go from here?
I don't think every game that has would benefit from romances necessarily, and if they did romances, I don't think they would necessarily want to do it the way we do it. We've sort of, I think, made a niche for ourselves a little bit in that it's pretty much an expectation by this point that if we do a game, we're going to allow for romantic options, and that we're never going to be able to satisfy everybody, right? Because everybody has a type, that maybe we don't fulfill, or we don't fulfill it in every game. Someone says, "Oh, I loved Alistair. I loved him." When are you going to do another Alistair? Probably never. Probably never. I mean, we're going to try different.
I'm like slowly rocking back and forth, like comforting myself now.
We're gonna try to do some different things, but in any particular game, we're gonna pick a few types, and hopefully, people will find them interesting. So, but what is the benefit? I mean, a game like Skyrim had romances. I guess you call them romances. Player marriages.
Yeah, it's like the Fable thing where you can marry someone and then they pretty much get locked up at your house and you're like, are you okay? Have I kidnapped you?
Yeah, I mean, I just love the you give them an amulet, it's like, you wanna? That's like the entire arc. Anyway, that's not that that's a bad thing, right? I mean, there could be various reasons why they didn't want to do everything in depth as we did. Maybe because of they're not going for that kind of characterization for the player, like leaving it open-ended. But I think the fact that we do what we do, it is a level of interaction and narrative that you don't get in every game, right? This is a chance for people who like different things. I mean, people play games for different reasons. To assume that everybody plays games because they love combat would be completely false. Not everybody loves combat. Some people just want to get through the combat to get to the story. Some people are explorers. They want to go around the world and see new things and learn about the world. Some people are progressioners. I forget what the word is, but they always want to level up. They want to get all the codex entries. Completionists, yeah. They want to get the Xbox Live Evos.
Gotta get everything.
Yeah.
Gotta catch them all.
Yeah. So trying to look at what different types of players are out there, and perhaps offering at least some types of players something in our game that they wouldn't easily get somewhere else, and I think it's important. And maybe it's also possible that there are games that avoid romantic issues because of the things that they consider awkward. When I was talking about earlier about the things that you say unintentionally, and they just think, well, you don't want to open that can of worms. Well, we opened it. We open it every time, and we're going to wade right into that pool because we get a benefit. We get a big benefit out of the romances we include, but that comes with a bit of responsibility as well. Yep.
I like it. I have this mental image of you kicking the door down and being like, "We're here." Romances for everyone. You get a romance. You get a romance. You get a romance.
I can't decide whether that makes me Santa or the Easter Bunny.
Well, I think you're Oprah in this case.
Wow.
Look under your seats.
Okay, I'll accept that rather than the cat.
It's tomorrow's Kotaku headline. BioWare says David Gator is the next Oprah.
I just go back to that gif of Oprah having all the Darth Malik kind of force lightning. I could do that, yeah.
BioWare says Oprah is
evil?
Darth Vader.
Yeah. Anyway, should we go to questions, you think? Or?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go to questions.
Who has questions?
Yeah.
I think we've got a runner. So.
I just came from the interactive fiction panel.
All right.
And talking about romances also,
Oh.
and really pushing the envelope. Interactive fiction, text adventure, they can really, really put like smoking vaginas, or just crazy stuff. But they're and cyberpunk, just crazy.
Are you sure they weren't playing?
No, it was all good. It was all good. It was all
Sure,
good.
this wasn't Cards Against Humanity?
No. But now you come from the environment of a AAA title world, and I was wondering where are you guys in terms of pushing the line, and do you guys push that, and how far do you try to do that every title, or how far is it going to get, and where's the sort of future in terms of pushing the line in romance and sexuality and exploring things beyond just the gay kiss and things like that?
Oh, okay. In terms of like, you're talking about like nudity or
the exploration of sexuality.
Oh,
yeah.
I've got a line.
Right.
So Patrick Weeks messaged me one day on Office Communicator, and he was like, "Do you want to see something?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, yeah, I do." And so he sent me something, and I was actually in Edmonton at the time, and he sent me something, and he was like, "Just watch this, but probably you want to watch it alone." And I was like, "Okay, well, whatever." And so I started watching, and I was like totally blushing, and I was like, I should not have watched this at work. Oh my god. And it was the trainer shower scene. Before first time anyone had seen that, and I was like, oh my god, we're gonna put that out there. Yes, we're gonna put that. That is not only pushing the line, but pushing the line I think even steamier than some of the heterosexual romances. I was like, that is, I like to see that.
Part of it we have to think about, of course, is it is a AAA title, and we have a rating to concern ourselves with, but it is a mature, like Dragon Age and Mass Effect are both mature titles. So there are things that we are allowed to do that maybe we don't. Then it becomes a question of whether or not we want to do it. I remember there's every now and again a thread will pop up on the BSN where it's like, well, why don't you guys do nudity, boobs, like, you know, and the assumption seems to be in these threads that we are censored, that maybe EA comes down and says no nudity. And it's really not the case. Really, we have a discussion, and it's a matter of taste. What do we think is tasteful? What do we think we want to do? Do we want to push to full sex scenes? Do we want to do interactive sex scenes? And you know, like, I don't know that we necessarily do. I mean, I think generally we've approached it as in sex should be a part of romance. Sex is a part of romance, at least in modern sensibilities, sure. I've always tried to maintain that as much as possible, we should allow for romance where the player can opt not to push it to a sexual place. Like, because I almost think that sometimes romance is complete and it ends with sex, and I don't think that is necessarily the message you want to send either. So it's something we do want to talk about, but I do think there are options as well for, there's nothing wrong with occasionally having a really steamy sex scene, especially the trainer one, because I love the version I love of that is when you don't go into the shower because you're just like do, and there's somebody in your shower behind you. So you coming? No, okay. I thought that was great. It's so awkward. Is there another question maybe? Who has the mic? Oh. Just pick one.
Oh, there's two mics, yeah.
Hi, I have two questions. One's quick and one's not so quick.
Okay.
So one, are you planning to have any transgender characters in future? You did have that one sex worker in 2 who made a couple of appearances, but I was wondering if there were going to be any more, not necessarily in the party, though that would be cool as well. But in the world or a companion or whatever. And then my second question is, if you had the choice, if it was completely up to you, and you were given a green light and all the budget in the world to make a further Dragon Age game after this one, what story would you want to write? Would you want to go back? Would you want to do another simultaneous plot line like you kind of did with Origins in 2, or would you want to go further in the timeline that you have in the World of Thetis book? Like, where would you want to go?
Okay, for the first question, I don't know that it's necessarily a quick question. the transgender characters, after we did 2, somebody came in our forums once and pointed out made a complaint and said, you know, you guys, every transgender character you've included in the game to date has been a prostitute and has been used probably for comedic purposes. And of course, the first reaction from some of the fans on the forums was to jump on them and say, "Oh, you know," and that kind of thing. And it's like I remember Mary Kirby wrote Serendipity in GA2, and she read that, and she told me, and we talked about it. And we thought, you know, that is absolutely true. That was very shitty of us, and we responded to that fan and said, you know, we hear you, and that wasn't our intention, but authorial attention only goes so far. So we definitely do want to address that. I don't know how many spots how many opportunities we will have to include a transgender character, but I'd like to at least say we definitely do not want to do it wrong. I mean, I included a transgender character in the recent comic just because I wanted to see for myself whether I could venture into that narratively and feel comfortable about it and how I would go about doing that. I would like to do more. So I can't make any promises, but that is something we recognize and we would like to address it, because I think that just because we loved Serendipity and Harmon, and it was really amazing to have someone point out to us that no, that was not as funny or as welcoming as you thought it was. So, you know, lesson learned. Insofar as what I would want to do, trick question. Like, well, if you had I can't imagine a world where I would have complete control over what kind of story I write. So
God, you like have locked all of us like in a closet somewhere and
yeah,
like, all tied up. And
I just get to be the cackling overlord with the whip, perhaps. Like, you make what I want. That's gonna be a GIF, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, make it so.
But honestly, my answer would be I would like to move forward. There is an arc we've had in mind for a long time, and sometimes it varies because plans change. But there was an arc we had in mind overall, like you're sitting around in a dark room, just sort of, okay, like, ooh, imagine you talk about the big plans, and it never quite turns out that way. So, but you'd like to get.
I'm sorry, you're just. Like, are you a beatnik? Like, where are you? Are you?
Well, you're sitting around the coffee shop and you're shooting the shit.
Like you and Audrey Hepburn and like some bongos. And... Sorry.
I do a great impression, by the way. I won't do it now.
That's for like anyone who wants to invite us to a party later.
No. Back to the question. Like to move forward, because I mean those big plans you pull out and survives contact with the enemy is the saying, right? And that's so true. Things have sort of changed, but there's still that we're still on that path, and I would like to see that to conclusion. And I'd like, my heart is set on seeing that to the conclusion that I had and the rest of the team had envisioned initially. So I wouldn't want to detach myself and say and claim that vision is only mine. The team has a vision, and they are storytellers as much as I am a storyteller. And I would like my hope is that we as a team can succeed in seeing that vision to fruition.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Is there another question? We still have time? Yes, we still have time.
Yeah, we've got lots of time.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned that you lose some things when you have the player sexual characters.
Sure.
How much thought has been put into adding a toggle at the beginning of the game that can kind of determine how the characters interact with you?
Like a gay toggle?
Like a gay toggle, yeah.
I wouldn't want a toggle like that, because I think that we have lots of content in our games that is potentially objectionable. And I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to turn it off. We don't turn off our massive amounts of violence. So why would we turn off homosexual content? If it's personal to the player, like if it's a romance, I'd want to make it optional. But to say, I just feel like even if it wasn't a toggle as in I don't want to see gay content. If it was you're making a character generation and you had like a sexuality button that you pressed, and I just, part of me feels that would be really awkward and maybe almost artificial.
Maybe it's spoilery as well.
Maybe. I just would that lend more ammunition to those people who say, well, I picked the straight option. Why am I still encountering gay content? Because they were, as far as I'm concerned, there still should be gay characters that you encounter, even if you don't intend to romance them. So I don't know. That's a larger design question. I feel it might be kind of artificial. There's lots of ways you can go around sort of allowing the player to access that content. And I think we've tried a few and found some success and some failures. So we're still sort of exploring it. I think ultimately it should be down, like when it's the romance is the players, it should be down to the player sort of. There are many ways a player can indicate to us that this is the kind of content they want to see, and if we look, we can make it subtle if we try and look for ways that, oh, that player wants that kind of content. Okay, you see more. Oh, they want more. Okay, and let them push themselves in that direction. I think that would feel the most natural.
Next question.
Yeah.
So given the deception paradigm that exists via prying game, not only in media, but in real life as well, as cis people, pregnant pause. I think it would be a lot better to have perhaps, instead of transgender characters, maybe have some more non-binary options for romance.
For romance?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah, that's a good comment. It really, ultimately, a lot of that comes down to where we spend our budget, where we can afford to. If there was a way we could work that into existing romances, maybe. That's worth a conversation, for sure. I agree. But I don't know how to answer that myself. Because, I mean, there's a lot of things about characters that writing doesn't have sole control over, so it's something that, as a group, we need to decide to do, because part of it relates to a character's appearance in the game.
Yeah.
I would hate to write something that doesn't carry through to the other parts of the game that the player can see, because I would think that would feel a little dishonest. So yeah, but it certainly isn't something that should be dismissed out of hand, because I think that is in the industry we seem to still be having struggles. Having female characters how we have strong female characters or have female characters at all that are representative of what reality is. Sometimes it feels like it's almost a struggle to sort of expand that conversation on things like gay characters, like the transgender or the labels don't end there, obviously, but
Diversity in general.
Diversity in general, it's an ongoing conversation, and I'd like to think that we can get there, someday. Certainly, it's going to take companies to individually recognize the importance of such to maybe underline it for others. So yeah, I agree. One more.
So what can we as fans do to help increase your word budget?
Well, if you're fans, you are buying the game, and you are ideally talking it up to your friends, and then they buy the game. And I mean, there's a sense of just budget.
Yeah, a lot of the budget for the words comes from how successful they believe they could expect the game to be. So if they were expecting that, hey, we believe this title could sell 10 million copies, that means we can afford to spend X much. That means we can afford, it trickles down to like, this is how many words we can afford, this, how many hours we can afford the game to be, and therefore how complex the interactions can be. But I mean, how much you individually have a control over that? I don't know. There's a lot that goes into that question, I guess. A couple of things. I mean, a way you could influence the word budget, probably not so much, but the way you can influence where we spend our word budget, that's a little different, right? Because expressing what you would like to see more of, what you consider important. I mean, in some of the reaction to DA2, that's where we thought maybe putting some of so much of the follower budget into their 3 personal plots, maybe that was too much. Because we got some reaction, and it was kind of hard to parse the reaction, because a lot of the reaction was like, I didn't feel like I knew the follower as well as I did in DAO. Okay, but I'm trying to interpret that, right? And it was like, well, maybe why they say that is because of these things that had changed in terms of the type of interaction. So, I mean, the more self-aware you can be in the reaction you're giving, or even if it's just, I felt this way, because very few people said, I felt like I didn't know the characters as well in the sequel. They added, because I think this and this and this, and that was for me like, I don't know if I can agree with that, but the feel part of it is very meaningful to me, because that's something that you have complete authority over. I can't contradict, that obviously made you feel that, and I can sort of take maybe you're saying why you think it is, and I can sort of take that as a maybe, I'll listen to it, but I need to know how you felt about it, and that expressing that. That goes to our last panel, in a thoughtful way. If I come across a post by someone, or an email, or even not on, never mind our own forums, if I come across it elsewhere, and somebody has expressed themselves in a way that is respectful and intelligent and self-aware, it doesn't matter, like. Every now and again we'll have a post of something like that, and someone will get jumped on like by other fans, and it gets derailed or even locked. It doesn't mean that first post doesn't get seen and thought of, because I mean it happens a lot on our forums. Somebody will start ask a question or express desire for gay content, and those same couple of trolls or whatever will show up and say something spiteful, and of course that elicits a reaction, and then suddenly it's an argument, and the thread gets shut down, and that could really make you despair as oh man. Yeah, from our perspective, it's like, well, discussions like this often get closed down. Doesn't mean that they don't get looked at. That first post, I might look at it, or our community managers, mods may look at it and say that was a really insightful post. I think it's important that the other developers see this.
It's unfortunate, but they almost get looked at more, because I usually get a message from our moderators who are like, okay, we need to ban all these people. And I'm like, okay, what did all these people do? And I'm like, oh, wow, that's, okay, well, as opposed to a thread where it was like, this thing, yes, we agree, and then it kind of like sometimes goes away, but it's back and forth, it's both sometimes.
Yeah.
But we do read it, and we listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a good place for us to kind of wrap up?
Maybe.
I mean, this has been such an amazing experience coming the past 2 days. It feels like we've been here a lot longer. It feels like summer camp, and now it's ending.
Yeah.
And, but it sounds like we want to be here next year. We love you guys.
And I'd just like to say as well, I think I've run into so many fans who've come up to me over the course of the last couple of days, who have said, why couldn't I romance Alistair? That too. But more than that, how much the games we've made have meant to them, how much the romances have meant to them. Some very heartfelt comments as well about how it helped validate their choice. And I thought, I was like, really, validate? That's a strong word, but they said, yeah. So it's really meaningful for these kind of opportunities to interact with you guys. And, I can't tell you what's coming in Inquisition yet. It's killing me that I can't. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Sorry? Oh, I wish I could. Mike would kill me.
He would.
Yeah. But I want you to know that we're always trying our best. I hope I can make you cry a whole lot of tears. And that's because I think you're all great, and I can't think of a better group of fans to try to please.
Totally. Thank you guys so much for coming out. We had an amazing 4 panels. Please tweet at BioWare and let us know what you want us to talk about next year. If you are interested in writing and romances and all kinds of things, David has an amazing Tumblr. I think it's dgator.tumblr.com or something around those lines. So check that out. Tweet at me any community concerns you have. I'm Jessica Marzin at BioWare. We want to talk to you more. This is an important group to us. The issues here are talked about all the time behind closed doors, and we hear you, and you are so important to us. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful few hours the rest of the con. Thank you, guys.